The massive alien ship hung in space like a glittering jewel against the black void. Its smooth silver surface reflected the distant light of Earth's sun as it slowly moved closer to the human vessel waiting in orbit. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Liberty, watching the alien craft through the main viewing screen. His heart beat faster as he realized this moment would change everything for humanity. "Sir, they're requesting permission to dock," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath. After 3 years of long-distance communication, they were finally going to meet face-to-face. "Grant them permission," Jake replied. He straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. Today, humanity would officially join the Galactic Coalition. Today, they would no longer be alone in the universe. The alien ship was called the Starweaver, and it carried representatives from 12 different alien civilizations. Jake had studied their files for months. There were the tall, green-scaled saurians who looked like walking lizards, the crystal-like beings called the quartz people who seemed to be made of living rock, the ghostly veil walkers who appeared and disappeared like smoke, and 9 other species that were equally strange and wonderful. Commander Zektar of the Saurians was leading the mission. Jake had spoken with him many times over video calls, but seeing an 8-foot-tall reptile in person would be different. The commander seemed friendly enough, always polite and interested in human culture, but there was something in his large yellow eyes that Jake couldn't quite understand. A kind of sadness or worry that never went away. "Captain, the docking is complete," announced Chief Engineer Chris Williams. "All systems are green. The alien delegation is ready to board." Jake nodded and walked toward the airlock. His senior staff followed him. There was Dr. Ben Carter, their expert on alien biology, Lieutenant Rodriguez, who would handle military discussions, Chief Medical Officer Lisa Thompson, who had prepared for months to treat alien injuries if needed, and Major Kelly Brooks, their best tactical officer. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss. Commander Zektar stepped through first, his powerful frame filling the doorway. His scales were a deep emerald green, and his eyes were indeed large and golden. Behind him came the other aliens, each one more amazing than the last. "Captain Morrison," Zektar said in perfect English, his voice deep and rumbling. "It is an honor to finally meet you in person." Jake extended his hand, remembering that Saurians understood the human gesture of handshaking. Zektar's grip was firm but careful, his clawed fingers surprisingly gentle. "The honor is ours, Commander," Jake replied. "Welcome aboard the Liberty." The introductions took nearly an hour. Each alien species had different customs and ways of greeting. The quartz people communicated partly through colored lights that flowed through their crystal bodies. The veil walkers seemed to phase in and out of reality as they spoke. Some of the other aliens looked almost human, while others were so strange that Jake had trouble believing they were real. After the formal greetings, Jake led the group to the main conference room. The humans had prepared presentations about Earth's history, culture, and technology. This was their chance to show the galaxy what humanity had to offer. Lieutenant Rodriguez went first. She had prepared a detailed presentation about human military, history, and tactics. The aliens listened carefully as she explained how humans had fought wars throughout their history, how they had developed concepts of honor and mercy in battle, and how they had rules about treating prisoners and protecting civilians. "We believe that even in war there must be limits," Rodriguez explained. "We have laws about how to treat enemies. When a soldier is badly wounded and cannot be saved, we sometimes put them out of their misery to end their suffering. We call this a mercy killing." Jake noticed that several aliens exchanged glances when Rodriguez said this. Commander Zektar's yellow eyes seemed to grow wider, and a small blue alien in the back row made a sound like a worried chirp. Dr. Carter spoke next about human medicine and biology. He explained how humans dealt with sickness and injury, how they performed surgery, and how they cared for their elderly and dying. When humans become very old or very sick, we try to make them comfortable in their final days, Carter said. "We have something called hospice care, where we help people die with dignity and without pain. Sometimes families must make the difficult choice to let a loved one go when there is no hope of recovery." Again, The alien seemed disturbed by this. The crystal being's lights flickered rapidly, and what Jake had learned was a sign of distress. A tall, thin alien with purple skin covered its face with its hands. Major Brooks presented information about human space capabilities and defense systems. She showed videos of human fighters in combat simulations, explaining tactics and strategies. When she mentioned that human pilots sometimes chose to ram enemy ships in desperate situations, sacrificing themselves to save others, the entire alien delegation fell silent. These pilots knew they would die, Brooks explained, but they chose to give their lives to protect their friends and families. We honor them as heroes. Commander Zektar stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. All eyes turned to him as he struggled to find words. "Captain Morrison," he said slowly, "I think there may be a serious misunderstanding here. When you speak of death, of sacrifice, of mercy killing, you speak as if these things are permanent, as if those who die cannot return." Jake frowned. "I don't understand, Commander. Of course death is permanent. When someone dies, they're gone forever. That's what makes it so tragic, and what makes sacrifice so meaningful." The alien delegation erupted in shocked whispers and strange sounds. Some of the beings seemed to be having trouble breathing. Others were flashing lights or changing colors rapidly. Commander Zektar sat back down heavily, his large head in his hands. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh no, no, no. We didn't know. How could we not know?" Dr. Carter leaned forward. "Commander, what's wrong? What didn't you know?" Zektar looked up, his golden eyes now filled with what could only be described as horror. "Captain Morrison, I need to speak with you privately, immediately. There is something about the galaxy, about life itself, that you don't understand. Something that changes everything." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The excitement of first contact was quickly being replaced by a growing sense of dread. Whatever the commander needed to tell him, it was clear that it would turn everything they thought they knew upside down. "Of course, Commander," Jake said quietly. "Let's go to my ready room." As they walked through the corridors of the Liberty, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to learn something that would change them forever. The other aliens followed at a distance, their strange voices whispering in languages he couldn't understand. But he didn't need to understand their words to know they were afraid. Afraid of what humans might do when they learned the truth about death in the galaxy. Afraid of what it meant that humans had built their entire civilization around the belief that death was final and forever. Jake Morrison had thought this day would mark humanity's triumphant entry into a larger universe. Instead, it felt like they were walking toward their own judgment day. Captain Jake Morrison closed the door to his ready room and gestured for Commander Zektar to sit down. The large Saurian looked deeply troubled, his green scales seeming darker than before. Jake had never seen an alien look so upset, and it made his stomach twist with worry. "Commander, what is it that we don't understand?" Jake asked, sitting across from the alien leader. "You look like someone just told you the universe was ending." Zektar let out a long, slow breath that sounded like steam escaping from a pipe. "Captain Morrison, what I am about to tell you will be difficult to believe. It will change everything about how you see the galaxy and your place in it." Jake leaned forward. "I'm listening." "When beings die in this galaxy," Zektar began slowly, "they do not stay dead. Death is not permanent for most species. It is temporary, like sleep or illness. We come back." Jake stared at him for a long moment. "What do you mean, you come back?" Zektar touched one of his scales, and Jake watched as it fell off into the commander's palm. "My people, the Saurians, store our genetic information in our scales. When we die, our families gather these scales and use them to grow us back. It takes about 6 months and we lose some memories from our final days, but we return." Jake felt like the room was spinning. "You're saying you can bring the dead back to life?" "Not just my people. Almost all species in the galaxy have some way to return from death. The Quartz people rebuild themselves from fragments of their crystal bodies. The Veil Walkers exist partially outside your physical reality, so death barely affects them. The Flower people can regrow from a single petal if it is preserved properly." Jake stood up suddenly, his chair sliding backward. That's impossible. Death is death. When your heart stops, when your brain dies, that's it. You're gone forever. Zektar looked at him with something that might have been pity. For humans, yes. But you are the only species we have ever encountered where death is truly permanent. You are unique in the galaxy, Captain Morrison. Tragically unique. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He sat back down heavily, trying to process what he was hearing. Are you telling me that every other intelligent species in the galaxy can cheat death? It is not cheating, Zektar said gently. It is simply how life works for us. We have been doing it for so long that we barely think about it anymore. Death is an inconvenience, not a tragedy. Jake's mind raced back to all the conversations he had had with alien species over the past 3 years. Suddenly, so many things made sense. Why they seemed confused when humans talked about honoring the dead. Why they didn't understand human concepts of sacrifice and heroism. Why they looked puzzled when humans spoke about making their lives count. How long have you known that humans are different? Jake asked. We suspected something was unusual about your species when we first made contact, Zektar admitted. The way you spoke about death, the way you treated it as something final and terrible. But we thought it was just a cultural difference. We never imagined that you actually could not return from death. Jake activated his communication system. Morrison to senior staff. Report to my ready room immediately. Within minutes, Dr. Carter, Lieutenant Rodriguez, Major Brooks, and Chief Medical Officer Thompson had arrived. Jake could see the confusion and concern in their faces. Sit down, all of you, Jake said. Commander Zektar has something to tell us that will change everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. Zektar repeated his explanation to the stunned human officers. Dr. Carter was the first to speak, his voice barely a whisper. Commander, are you saying that if I died right now, there would be no way to bring me back? That is correct, Doctor. If any human dies, they are gone forever. This is why we were so horrified by your presentations. When you spoke of soldiers sacrificing their lives, of mercy killings, of letting the elderly die peacefully, you were talking about permanent extinction. We had no idea. Chief Medical Officer Thompson covered her face with her hands. All those times we've spoken with alien doctors about terminal patients, about difficult medical decisions, they must have thought we were monsters. Not monsters, Zektar said quickly, but we did not understand. In our medical practices, if a patient is too badly injured to heal, we simply let them die and then bring them back with a fresh, healthy body. The idea of letting someone suffer when death could provide relief never occurred to us because death is not an ending for us. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked pale. When I talked about military tactics, about soldiers making sacrifices, you must have thought I was describing some kind of nightmare. We thought humans were either incredibly brave or completely insane, Zektar admitted. To willingly face permanent extinction for any cause seemed impossible to understand. Now we realize you are both brave and tragic beyond our comprehension. Major Brooks shook her head slowly. How do other species fight wars if death doesn't mean anything? Our conflicts are very different from yours, Zektar explained. Death in battle is seen as a temporary defeat, not a permanent loss. Wars are often decided by who can afford the resources to keep bringing their soldiers back, not by who is willing to die for their cause. Dr. Carter leaned back in his chair, looking overwhelmed. This explains so much about alien psychology and culture. If death isn't permanent, then individual lives don't have the same weight they do for humans. Exactly, Zektar said. We have been struggling to understand human art, literature, and philosophy. So much of your culture is focused on mortality, on making life meaningful because it is brief. We found it beautiful but confusing. Now we understand that you created meaning because you knew your time was limited. Jake felt a deep sadness settling over him. So when humans join the Galactic Coalition, we'll be the only species that truly dies. Yes, Zektar said softly. You will be the only species that faces real stakes in everything you do. Every choice you make carries the weight of permanent consequences. The room fell silent as the humans absorbed this information. Finally, Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke up. Does this change anything about our membership in the coalition? Zektar considered this carefully. It changes everything and nothing. You are still welcome, perhaps more welcome than before. But there will need to be new protocols, new understandings. We cannot ask humans to take the same risks we take casually. Your lives are infinitely more precious because they cannot be replaced. Doctor, Carter looked thoughtful. Commander, have other species ever studied human attitudes toward death and mortality? Some have begun to, Zektar replied. There is growing interest in human philosophy precisely because you have developed wisdom about the meaning of finite existence. Many of our species have become complacent about life because death holds no terror for us. Chief Medical Officer Thompson asked, Are there any other species in the galaxy that experience permanent death? None that we know of, Zektar said. You are truly alone in this. It makes you both the most vulnerable and the most remarkable species we have ever encountered. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out, there were billions of beings who saw death as a temporary inconvenience. And here was humanity, facing the universe with the knowledge that every moment might be their last. Commander, Jake said without turning around, I think we need to inform the rest of our crew about this, and we need to send a message back to Earth. This changes everything about how humanity sees its place in the galaxy. Zektar nodded. I agree, Captain, but I want you to know something. In the past few hours, as I have watched your crew process this information, I have seen something remarkable. You are not broken by the knowledge that death is permanent. You are made stronger by it. Perhaps that is humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. The news spread through the human ship like wildfire. Within hours, every crew member on the Liberty knew the truth about death in the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison watched his people react with a mixture of shock, sadness, and something that might have been pride. They were alone in the universe in ways they had never imagined. In the main conference room, Commander Zektar was speaking with the other alien representatives. Jake could hear their strange voices through the walls, some angry, some worried, some making sounds he couldn't identify. The revelation had shaken the alien delegation as much as it had the humans. Jake's communication console chimed with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Word was spreading fast through the Galactic Coalition networks. He opened the first message and saw the face of General Crixton of the Crimson Horde, a warrior species with red skin and 4 arms. Captain Morrison, the general said in his rough voice, I have heard the news about your species. I want you to know that the Crimson Horde has always respected human courage in battle. Now we understand why you fight as you do. You face true death every time you enter combat, yet you do not hesitate. This is the bravery of legends. The next message was from High Counselor Velara of the Harmony Collective, a peaceful species that looked like tall, graceful plants. Captain Morrison, our hearts weep for your people. To live every day knowing that one mistake, one accident, one moment of violence could erase you forever. How do you find the strength to continue? How do you find joy in such a cruel existence? More messages kept coming. Some aliens expressed awe at human courage. Others offered sympathy for humanity's terrible burden. A few seemed frightened as if permanent death might somehow be contagious. Dr. Ben Carter entered Jake's ready room with a datapad full of notes. Captain, I've been talking with the alien medical officers. Their reaction to our mortality is fascinating and disturbing. What do you mean? Jake asked. They're treating us like we have some kind of disease, Carter explained. Several species have already started working on ways to give humans the ability to return from death. They see our mortality as a problem that needs to be fixed. Jake frowned. Do we want to be fixed? Before Carter could answer, Major Kelly Brooks knocked on the door. She entered with a grim expression on her face. Captain, I've been talking with alien military commanders about joint operations. They're terrified of working with us now. Terrified? Why? Brooks sat down heavily. Because they can't understand how we make tactical decisions. When they plan a mission, they consider death a minor setback. A soldier dies, they bring him back and he learns from the experience. But for us, every mission where someone might die is a decision that could erase a person forever. She pulled up a holographic display showing battle plans. Look at this. Commander Thexali of the Silver Fleet sent me their standard assault strategy. It involves sending soldiers into situations with a 90% casualty rate because death is temporary for them. They can't comprehend fighting any other way. Jake studied the battle plans. So they think we're either cowards for being careful with our lives or madmen for taking risks at all. Exactly, Brooks said. And it gets worse. Some species are saying we shouldn't be allowed in combat zones at all because we can't be replaced. If we die. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez entered the room looking frustrated. Captain, I just finished a call with the Galactic Defense Council. They want to create special protocols for human personnel. We'd be classified as irreplaceable assets and kept away from any dangerous assignments. Jake stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, he could see the alien ship Starweaver, its surface gleaming in the starlight. It represented everything humanity had dreamed of: contact with other intelligent life, membership in a galactic community, adventures among the stars. But now it felt like a reminder of how alone they truly were. Sir, Rodriguez continued, there's something else. Father Paul Martinez has been talking with alien spiritual leaders. They're having trouble understanding human religion and philosophy. What kind of trouble? Well, most alien religions focus on the cycle of death and rebirth, since that's their reality. They see death as a doorway, not an ending. Our ideas about souls, about final judgment, about making peace before you die, it's completely foreign to them. Carter looked up from his notes. The philosophical implications are staggering. Think about it. If death isn't permanent, then concepts like heroic sacrifice, martyrdom, and tragic loss don't exist for them. Their entire understanding of meaning and purpose is based on continuity, not finitude. Jake's communication console chimed again. This time it was a message from Admiral Rexmar of the Deep Space Patrol, a species that looked like living metal. Sculptures. Captain Morrison, I have been thinking about what your mortality means for galactic security. If humans can truly die permanently, then your species faces risks that no other beings in the galaxy understand. Perhaps this explains why you have developed such sophisticated defensive technologies and strategies. You fight like beings who have everything to lose because you do. The next message was from Dr. Sil Nth of the Medical Research Consortium, a being that resembled a giant brain with tentacles. Captain, I am fascinated by human psychology in the face of permanent death. How do you maintain sanity knowing that your existence could end at any moment? How do you form emotional attachments knowing that loss is absolute? I would very much like to study your species' mental health practices. Jake turned to his senior staff. What are your thoughts? How should we handle this situation? Carter spoke first. Captain, I think we need to be careful about letting other species try to fix our mortality. Death may be terrifying, but it's also what makes us human. It drives us to create, to love deeply, to fight for what matters. Brooks nodded. Agreed. Our mortality is our strength, not our weakness. It makes every choice meaningful, every relationship precious, every moment count. Rodriguez added, the aliens see our mortality as a tragedy, but maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're the ones missing something important. Just then, Chief Engineer Chris Williams entered the room, looking excited. Captain, you need to hear this. I was talking with some of the alien engineers about their technology and I realized something amazing. What is it, Chris? They've never had to develop the same safety protocols we have. Because death is temporary for them, they take risks. With their technology, that would be unthinkable for humans. But that also means they've never pushed their safety systems to be as good as ours. Williams pulled up technical specifications on his datapad. Look at our life support systems, our emergency procedures, our redundant safety measures. We've spent centuries making our technology safer because we can't afford to die. As a result, our safety standards are higher than anything in the galaxy. Jake felt something like hope stirring in his chest. You're saying our mortality forced us to be more careful, more innovative? Exactly. And there's more. I've been looking at their historical records. Species that can return from death tend to stagnate technologically. Why improve if failure isn't permanent? But humans have to get things right the first time. So we keep pushing forward. Carter looked thoughtful. That could explain why human technology impressed the aliens so much when we first made contact. We've been driven by necessity to achieve things they never needed to. Jake sat back down, feeling the weight of command settling on his shoulders. Humanity was about to enter a galaxy where they were the only species that truly faced death. It would be dangerous and lonely and frightening, but maybe, just maybe, their mortality was exactly what the galaxy needed. The emergency signal came 3 days after the revelation about human mortality. Captain Jake Morrison was in his ready room reviewing diplomatic reports when the urgent message appeared on his screen. A mining colony on the edge of Coalition. Space was under attack by the Ironclaw pirates, a group of renegade aliens who raided peaceful settlements. All hands to battle stations, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. This is not a drill. Within minutes, the senior staff had gathered on the bridge. Commander Zektar and several other alien representatives were also present, their faces showing concern and uncertainty. Captain, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez reported from her station. The mining colony has 2,000 workers, including families with children. The Iron Claw has surrounded the colony with 5 heavy attack ships. Major Kelly Brooks studied the tactical display. Sir, the colony's defenses won't hold for more than a few hours. We need to move fast. Commander Zektar stepped forward, his golden eyes troubled. Captain Morrison, perhaps we should wait for additional coalition forces. This seems very dangerous, Jake looked at him with surprise. Commander, those are innocent people down there. Every minute we wait, more of them could die. But Captain, said Velcris, one of the crystal-like quartz people, if we rush in without proper planning, we could lose crew members. For your species, such losses would be permanent. The bridge fell silent as the weight of those words sank, and for the first time since learning about galactic mortality, the human crew was facing a real combat situation where their lives would be truly at risk. Dr. Ben Carter spoke quietly. Captain, the aliens are right. If we lose people in this battle, they're gone forever. We can't bring them back like other species can. Jake felt the eyes of his crew on him. He could see the fear in their faces, but also something else. Determination. The same look he had seen on human faces throughout history when good people were threatened. Rodriguez, how long until coalition reinforcements arrive? Jake asked. 6 hours at minimum, sir. The colony won't last that long. Jake turned to Commander Zektar. Commander, what would a typical coalition response be in this situation? Zektar looked uncomfortable. We would analyze the situation carefully, calculate acceptable loss ratios, and develop a plan that minimizes resource expenditure. If some defenders died during the wait, they could be brought back later. And how long would this analysis take? Several hours, perhaps a full day for a situation this complex. Major Brooks stepped forward. Captain, I volunteered to lead the rescue mission. I know the risks. So do I, said Lieutenant Rodriguez. And me, added Chief Engineer Chris Williams. Jake looked around the bridge and saw the same expression on every human face. They all understood that they might die permanently, but they were willing to take the risk to save innocent lives. Commander Zektar stared at them in amazement. You cannot be serious. You are volunteering for a mission that could erase you from existence forever. Commander, Jake said calmly, this is what we do. This is who we are. Those people down there are counting on us. The alien delegation huddled together, speaking in their own languages. Jake could hear the confusion and worry in their voices. Finally, Zektar turned back to the humans. Captain, I do not understand your species, but I am beginning to respect you more than I thought possible. If you are determined to do this, the Star Weaver will assist you. Thank you, Commander, but I can't ask your people to take risks for us. Zektar's scaled face showed what might have been a smile. Captain, You misunderstand. Death may be temporary for us, but watching your species face permanent extinction for the sake of strangers has taught us something about the meaning of sacrifice. We want to help because it is the right thing to do. The battle plan came together, quickly. The human ship Liberty would attack the pirate vessels head-on, drawing their attention. Meanwhile, the alien ship Starweaver would use its advanced stealth systems to evacuate civilians from the colony. As they approached the battle zone, Jake found himself thinking about what made this fight different from any other military engagement in galactic history. When alien soldiers went into battle, they knew that death was just a temporary setback. But when humans fought, they knew that any mistake could mean permanent extinction. All fighters launch, Jake ordered. Remember, we're not just fighting for the colony. We're showing the galaxy what humanity stands for. Pilot Susan Davis led the first wave of human fighters toward the pirate ships. Her voice came over the communication channel, steady and professional despite the danger. Liberty fighters, this is Eagle 1. I have visual on the enemy ships. They're bigger than expected, but we've faced worse odds before. The battle began with a devastating exchange of weapons fire. The Ironclaw pirates were experienced fighters and their ships were heavily armed. Within the first few minutes, 2 human fighters were damaged and forced to retreat. Eagle 3 is hit, reported another pilot. I'm losing power to my engines. Eagle 3. This is Eagle 1, Susan Davis responded. I'm coming to get you. Hold tight. Jake watched on the main screen as Susan's fighter swooped down to protect the damaged ship. She positioned herself between the wounded fighter and the pirate vessels, taking heavy fire on her shields. Commander Zektar stood beside Jake, watching the battle with intense concentration. Captain, your pilot is sacrificing her own safety to protect her wingman. If she dies, she cannot return. I know, Jake said quietly. But she knows it too, and she's doing it anyway. On the screen, they watched Susan's fighter take a direct hit. Her shields failed and her ship began to spin out of control. But instead of trying to escape to safety, she aimed her damaged fighter directly at the largest pirate ship. Eagle 1 to Liberty, Susan's voice crackled over the radio. My ship is finished, but I can take out their command vessel. Tell my kids back on Earth that their mom loves them. Susan, no! Jake shouted, but it was too late. Susan Davis's fighter crashed into the pirate command ship at full speed. The explosion was visible from thousands of miles away. Both ships were destroyed instantly, along with everyone aboard them. The bridge of the Liberty fell silent. Jake felt tears running down his face as he realized that Susan Davis, who had served with him for 5 years, was gone forever. There would be no bringing her back, no second chance, no resurrection. But her sacrifice had worked. With their command ship destroyed, the remaining pirate vessels scattered and fled. The colony was safe. Commander Zektar placed a clawed hand on Jake's shoulder. Captain, I am sorry for your loss, but I want you to know that what we witnessed today will be remembered throughout the galaxy. Your pilot chose permanent extinction to save strangers. This is a kind of heroism that most species cannot comprehend. As the rescue ships arrived at the colony, Jake stood looking out at the stars where Susan Davis had made her final flight. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing both grief and pride. Dr. Carter approached him, quietly. Captain, the alien medical teams are asking about funeral arrangements. They want to know how humans honor those who die permanently. Jake nodded slowly. Tell them we'll show them, Doctor. It's time the galaxy learned about how we remember those who give everything and can never return. The battle was over, but Jake knew that its real impact was just beginning. For the first time, alien species had witnessed humans willingly face permanent death to protect others. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. 6 months had passed since the battle at the mining colony. The funeral service for pilot Susan Davis had been watched by billions of beings across the galaxy through live broadcast. For the first time in galactic history, alien species witnessed humans grieving for someone who would never return. Admiral Frank Peterson stood before the Galactic Council in the Great Assembly Hall on the planet. Nexus Prime. Representatives from over 300 species filled the massive chamber, their diverse forms creating a colorful tapestry of life from across the galaxy. Today, humanity would officially join the Galactic Coalition. But everything had changed since that first meeting aboard the Liberty. Honored members of the Council, Admiral Peterson began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. 6 months ago, you learned that humanity experiences death differently than every other known species. Today, I want to talk about what that means for all of us. In the front rows, Admiral Peterson could see familiar faces. Commander Zektar sat with the Saurian delegation, his golden eyes bright with interest. The crystal beings of the quartz. People flickered with soft lights. The ghostly veil walkers shimmered in and out of visibility. When humans learned that death is temporary for other species, we could have despaired, Peterson continued. We could have seen ourselves as cursed, as the unlucky beings who drew the short straw in the cosmic lottery. But instead we realized something important. He paused, looking around the vast assembly. Our mortality is not our weakness, it is our strength. It is what makes us who we are. A murmur ran through the chamber as the translation systems carried his words to hundreds of different languages and communication methods. Because we know that death is permanent. Every human life has infinite value, Peterson explained. We cannot afford to waste a single person. This has forced us to develop technologies, strategies, and philosophies that the galaxy has never seen before. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the observation deck as Admiral Peterson continued his address. Beside him stood Dr. Ben Carter, who had spent the past month studying the psychological effects of permanent death on both humans and aliens. Captain, Dr. Carter said quietly, look at the alien delegates. They're hanging on every word. Jake nodded. In the months since Susan Davis's sacrifice, something remarkable had happened. Alien species across the galaxy had begun studying human culture, philosophy, and technology with intense interest. Universities had created new departments dedicated to mortality studies. Alien poets wrote verses about the beauty of finite existence. Even alien military academies were teaching human concepts of honor and sacrifice. On the main floor, Admiral Peterson was sharing statistics that had amazed the galactic community. Since learning about galactic resurrection technology, several alien species have experienced their lowest death rates in recorded history, Peterson announced. It seems that witnessing humanity's relationship with permanent death has made other species more careful with their supposedly temporary lives. This was true. The Crimson Horde, once famous for their reckless battle tactics, had begun developing new strategies that minimized casualties. The Flower People had started creating memorial gardens for their temporarily dead, something they had never done before. Even the logical Crystal People had begun incorporating concepts of loss and remembrance into their society. Commander Zektar rose from his seat and requested permission to speak. The council chamber fell silent as the tall Saurian approached the speaking platform. Fellow beings, Zektar began. 6 months ago, I thought humans were either the bravest or the most foolish species in the galaxy. Now I understand they are something far more important. They are our teachers. Jake felt a surge of pride as Zektar continued. My people, the Saurians, have lived for millions of years knowing that death is temporary. Because of this, we became careless with life. We took risks without thinking. We hurt each other knowing the damage could be undone. But humans have shown us that every moment matters because it cannot be repeated. Zektar turned to look directly at Admiral Peterson. The human pilot Susan Davis chose permanent extinction to save strangers. This act has been studied by every military academy in the galaxy. Not because we want to copy it, but because we want to understand the kind of courage that comes from knowing your choice is final. The council chamber erupted in sounds of agreement from dozens of different species. Clicks, chirps, musical tones, and electronic beeps filled the air as alien delegates expressed their approval. Dr. Silenth of the Medical Research Consortium approached the platform next. The giant brain-like being's tentacles writhed with excitement as it spoke. The humans have taught us something we did not know we were missing, Dr. Silenth announced. The knowledge that existence is finite gives it meaning. We have begun studying human art, literature, and music. The beauty comes from the understanding that the artist will someday be gone forever. This too was true. Human music had become incredibly popular across the galaxy. Alien composers were trying to capture the bittersweet beauty of mortal melodies. Human books were being translated into thousands of alien languages. The concept of tragic heroes and meaningful sacrifices was revolutionizing galactic entertainment. Admiral Peterson resumed his speech. The Galactic Coalition has always been about different species learning from each other. Humans bring something unique to this community. We bring the perspective of beings who know that every choice has permanent consequences. He gestured to a display screen that showed statistics from across the galaxy. In the past 6 months, accidental death rates have dropped by 40%. Among species that have been studying human safety protocols, suicide rates have fallen to near zero, as beings who previously saw death as escape have learned to value their finite time. Even crime rates have decreased as criminals consider the permanent consequences of their actions. Jake smiled as he watched the alien delegates react to these numbers. Humanity's curse of permanent death was becoming the galaxy's blessing. New voice spoke from the chamber floor. It was High Counselor Velara of the Harmony Collective, her plant-like form swaying gracefully as she approached the platform. 6 months ago, we wept for humanity, thinking you were trapped in a cruel existence where death could steal you away forever, she said, her voice like wind through leaves. Now we understand that you are the lucky ones. You know that your time matters because it is limited. She turned to address the entire assembly. The Harmony Collective moves to grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Coalition, with a special designation as Guardians of Meaning. Let their mortality remind us all that existence is precious precisely because it does not last forever. The vote was unanimous. Every species in the galaxy agreed that humanity deserved a place in the coalition, not despite their mortality, but because of it. After the ceremony, Jake found himself standing on an observation deck overlooking the planet's capital city. The lights below twinkled like stars, representing millions of alien beings who now understood that life was more beautiful when it was finite. Dr. Carter joined him at the window. Captain, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we could resurrect our dead like other species? Jake thought about Susan Davis, about all the humans throughout history who had made the ultimate sacrifice. I think we would have lost something essential about what makes us human, Doctor. Our mortality forces us to love deeper, fight harder, and create meaning from the time we have. Commander Zektar approached them, his heavy footsteps echoing in the corridor. Captain Morris and Dr. Carter, I wanted to thank you. Thank us for what, Commander? Jake asked. For teaching the galaxy that death is not the enemy of life, Zektar replied. Death is what gives life its urgency, its beauty, its meaning. You humans have reminded us all that the most precious things are those that cannot be replaced. As they stood together looking out at the alien city, Jake realized that humanity had found its place in the galaxy. They were not the strongest species, or the smartest, or the most advanced. But they were the only ones who truly understood that every moment was a gift because it would never come again. The galaxy had learned that when humans said merciful death, they meant something other species couldn't comprehend. They meant a death that was final, complete, and therefore infinitely meaningful. And in learning this, the galaxy had discovered something it never knew it was missing: the knowledge that finite existence was the most precious gift in the universe.